What happens when engineers take powerful fighter jet engines, ignore common sense, and bolt them onto cars? The answer is some of the most insane machines ever built by mankind. These monsters aren't just fast, they're capable of producing thousands of horsepower, shooting flames dozens of feet into the air, and reaching speeds that most aircraft would envy. From record-breaking land speed rockets to fire-breathing jet trucks, today's list is packed with engineering madness, unbelievable speed, and a few stories that ended in disaster. If you're new to the channel and love extreme machines and incredible technology, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now, let's dive into the 10 most insane fighter jet-powered cars ever created. Long before jet-powered machines began chasing speed records, engineers believed the simplest solution was to build bigger engines. That thinking led to the creation of the Fiat S76, one of the most outrageous automobiles ever constructed. Introduced in 1911, this giant machine was powered by a massive 28.5-liter four-cylinder engine, an engine so large that each piston was closer in size to artillery equipment than anything found in a normal car. Starting it was a spectacle in itself, requiring mechanics to hand-crank the engine before it erupted into life with a thunderous roar that could be felt as much as heard. Flames often burst from the exposed exhaust system, while the entire chassis shook violently with every firing stroke. Driving the S76 was far from comfortable. Its suspension was crude, its tires were narrow, and its brakes offered little confidence at speed. Weighing nearly 3,700 pounds, the car demanded complete focus and courage from anyone brave enough to climb into the open cockpit. Yet, despite its intimidating nature, drivers pushed this mechanical giant beyond 116 miles per hour, an astonishing achievement for the early 1900s. The Fiat S76 was more than a racing car. It was an experiment in pure speed at a time when few limits existed. Its creators proved that bold ideas could produce extraordinary results, helping inspire generations of engineers who would continue pushing the boundaries of automotive performance for decades to come. In the Roaring '20s, the obsession with speed pushed engineers toward one radical idea. If aircraft engines could fly planes across oceans, why not use them to break land speed records? That mindset led to the Sunbeam 350 horsepower, a machine that looked less like a car and more like a fighter aircraft reshaped for the ground. Under its long, streamlined hood sat a massive 18.3-liter Manitou 512 aircraft engine, originally built for naval seaplanes designed to handle long, demanding missions over open water. British racing legend Malcolm Campbell saw its potential and turned it into a record-breaking weapon, painting it in his iconic bluebird colors before taking it to Pendine Sands in Wales. There, with cold sea spray hitting his goggles and the car fighting the loose, wet surface, he pushed the heavy machine to around 150 miles per hour in 1924. Controlling it was far from easy, steering was heavy, brakes were basic, and every run felt like a battle to keep the car straight. But the sound of that enormous V12 echoing across the beach helped define an entire era of early speed record attempts. The Sunbeam. 350 horsepower showed the world that aircraft engines could dominate land speed racing, sparking a global race where engineers and drivers pushed machinery to extremes in a relentless pursuit of velocity that would shape motorsport history. This is where the relentless chase for speed took a darker turn. The machine known as Babs, originally called the Hyam Special, was a massive chain-driven land speed car powered by a 27-liter Liberty 512 aircraft engine, a surplus power unit built for World War I bombers rather than racing. In the hands of engineer and driver J.G. Perry Thomas, it became a record-setting machine, but it was also living far beyond what 1920s technology could safely handle. Tires, chains, and chassis components were constantly under extreme stress, especially with so much torque being sent through such a primitive setup. In March 1927 at Pendine Sands in Wales, Perry Thomas returned to chase another speed record, pushing Babs beyond 170 miles per hour on the wet, unstable beach. During the run, the drivetrain failed catastrophically when a heavily loaded drive chain snapped under pressure. The metal chain whipped into the cockpit with devastating force, killing Perry Thomas instantly and sending the car out of control as it rolled violently across the sand. The accident marked one of the most tragic moments in early motorsport history. Out of respect, Babs was buried in the very dunes where the crash happened, becoming a silent monument to that era of extreme experimentation. Decades later, it was carefully recovered and restored, but its story still stands as a reminder that early speed records came at a real human cost, when ambition often moved faster than the limits of engineering safety. To handle the brutal, bumpy, high-banked concrete curves of the famous Brooklyn circuit in the 1930s, engineers needed something far beyond normal racing machines. Reed Railton and driver John Cobb answered that challenge with one of the most extreme creations of the era, the Napier Railton. At its core was a massive 24-liter W12 Napier Lion aircraft engine, a masterpiece of British aviation engineering originally built for aircraft, not racing. Instead of just chasing straight-line speed like earlier aero-engined cars, this machine was designed to actually handle corners on a proper circuit. The engine was fitted into a heavily reinforced chassis, resulting in a machine weighing over 4,500 pounds, yet still producing around 580 horsepower, an incredible figure for 1933. Controlling it required real physical effort, as every corner at Brooklands demanded strength, precision, and courage. When it ran at full speed, the sound of its engine echoed across the banking like a mechanical storm, powerful enough to be felt as much as heard. The Napier Railton's performance reached its peak when it set an all-time lap record at Brooklands with an average speed of 143.4 miles per hour, a record that still stands because the circuit itself no longer exists. More than just a race car, it represents a time when engineers solved problems not by reducing complexity, but by adding more power, turning aviation engines into raw speed machines for the track. By the late 1960s, the era of big piston aero-engine race cars was fading, and the jet age was starting to influence motorsport in new ways. One of the boldest experiments from this transition was the Helmet TX, a sports car that completely rejected the traditional V8 formula. Instead, it used a Continental gas turbine engine originally designed for a lightweight military helicopter, bringing aviation-style power into endurance racing. The idea was simple on paper but radical in practice: smooth, continuous turbine power replacing conventional combustion engines. Because it didn't need a gearbox or a heavy cooling system, the car ended up incredibly light at around 1,450 pounds, giving it a unique advantage on track. Surprisingly, the concept wasn't just theoretical. The Helmet TX even managed to win official races, proving the idea had real potential. But the biggest challenge came from its nature as a turbine: throttle response. When the driver pressed the accelerator, there was a noticeable delay before full power arrived, making it tricky to control, especially when exiting slow corners where timing was everything. Drivers often had to anticipate acceleration moments before they actually needed them. Over time, that unpredictability became too much for endurance racing, and the concept was eventually abandoned in favor of more reliable piston engines. Still, the Helmet TX remains one of motorsport's most fascinating experiments, a rare moment when turbine power briefly proved it could compete, and a reminder that racing history is full of ideas that were as brave as they were short-lived. In the midst of turbine experiments in sports car racing, Colin Chapman and Lotus pushed the idea onto one of the biggest stages in motorsport, the Indianapolis 500. The result was the Lotus 56, one of the most radical Indy cars ever built. First, it's important to clear up a common myth. It didn't rely on jet thrust or flames pushing it forward like a fighter jet. Instead, it used a Pratt & Whitney gas turbine engine that delivered mechanical power to all four wheels through an advanced all-wheel drive system. The result was a car that ran with an almost unnatural smoothness, producing a high-pitched, eerie hiss rather than the familiar roar of a V8. Combined with Lotus's wedge-shaped aerodynamic design, the car was incredibly fast and stable on the oval. During the 1968 Indianapolis 500, driver Joe Leonard put it on pole position and led the race comfortably, showing just how competitive turbine power could be in top-level racing. For a moment, it looked like a complete shift in motorsport technology was underway. But near the end of the race, with only a few laps remaining, a small but critical fuel pump shaft failed, instantly shutting the engine down and ending its winning chance. Even in defeat, the Lotus 56 made such an impact that officials reacted quickly, introducing new rules that effectively ended turbine participation at Indy. What remained was one of motorsport's most fascinating what-if stories, where a brief flash of innovation nearly changed racing history forever. Pure jet thrust takes speed into its most extreme form, and the Vampire Dragster is one of its most intense examples. Unlike traditional vehicles, it doesn't rely on a transmission or driven wheels. Instead, a Rolls-Royce Orpheus turbojet engine produces around 5,000 pounds of raw thrust, literally pushing the machine forward like a ground-bound aircraft. Built for straight-line speed only, it has reached over 300 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest jet-powered vehicles ever created. Its design is so extreme that it feels closer to a missile on wheels than a conventional drag car. But the machine became widely known for a far more serious reason. During a high-speed filming run for Top Gear in 2006, presenter Richard Hammond was driving the Vampire Dragster at nearly 288 miles per hour when a front tire suddenly failed. At that speed, the car instantly lost stability, left the track, and rolled multiple times in a violent crash that was broadcast and later became one of the most shocking moments in automotive television history. Hammond survived the accident, but the vehicle was destroyed beyond repair. The incident highlighted the razor-thin margin between control and catastrophe in jet-powered land speed machines. When a military-grade jet engine is mounted to a lightweight chassis, everything depends on perfect stability, because even a small mechanical failure at those speeds can turn a record attempt into a life-threatening disaster. The Vampire Dragster remains a powerful reminder that while thrust is easy to create, keeping it safely under control is the real engineering challenge. In 1983, a British team led by Richard Noble pushed the jet-powered land speed concept into one of its most extreme chapters yet, deep in the Black Rock Desert of Nevada. At the heart of the machine sat a single Rolls-Royce Avon turbojet engine, the same type used in the English Electric Lightning, a British supersonic fighter aircraft. Producing around 17,000 pounds of thrust, it turned the car into something far closer to a ground-hugging missile than a traditional vehicle. With no conventional tires capable of surviving such speeds, engineers used solid aluminum wheels, designed purely to survive the brutal forces of high-speed desert running. This machine, known as Thrust 2, was driven by Richard Noble across the empty desert floor in a careful battle to keep it stable at extreme velocity. Inside the cockpit, vibration and noise were so intense that visibility and focus became a constant challenge, demanding absolute precision and control at every moment. Despite the conditions, Noble managed to bring the car under control and set a new world land speed record of 633.4 miles per hour, a milestone that defined an era of jet-powered engineering. The sound of the Avon engine echoing across the Nevada desert became one of the most iconic moments in land speed history. It proved that reaching extreme velocity required completely rethinking vehicle design and embracing aviation-level power. More importantly, it set the stage for future projects that would push even closer to the ultimate barrier, breaking the speed of sound on land. This is where American engineering madness hits its peak. Imagine taking a classic Peterbilt 379 semi-truck and completely stripping away its diesel heart, replacing it with something that belongs in naval aviation. That's exactly what Les Shockley did when he built the Shockwave jet truck. Instead of one engine, he mounted 3 Westinghouse J-34 turbojet engines taken from Navy fighter aircraft, turning a heavy-duty highway truck into a fire-breathing exhibition machine that breaks every rule of conventional transport. The result is not a truck in the traditional sense, but a rolling jet display producing around 36,000 horsepower and roughly 21,000 pounds of thrust. It can blast down the quarter mile in about 6.6 seconds and reach speeds close to 300 miles per hour, numbers that put it in the territory of racing prototypes rather than commercial vehicles. Because no normal braking system could survive that kind of energy, the Shockwave relies on large parachutes to slow it down after a run. When all 3 jet engines ignite together during night shows, massive flames shoot out the back, lighting up the track and sending vibrations that can be felt from far away. The fuel consumption is just as extreme, burning hundreds of gallons of jet fuel in a single pass. Shockwave jet truck stands as one of the most dramatic examples of jet propulsion applied to land vehicles. It's less about practicality and more about spectacle. a loud, unapologetic showcase of what happens when aviation power is strapped onto a truck, built purely for show-stopping performance. Now we've reached the absolute peak of land speed engineering, where the idea of a car starts to disappear completely. The Bloodhound LSR is not really a vehicle in the traditional sense. It's closer to a supersonic aircraft designed to stay pinned to the ground while chasing speeds beyond 1,000 miles per hour. Nothing about it relies on normal automotive logic anymore. A Eurofighter Typhoon jet engine is used just to get it moving, pushing the machine up to around 300 miles per hour before the real system takes over. At that point, a hybrid rocket motor ignites, delivering an enormous surge of power equivalent to roughly 135,000 horsepower. The scale becomes easier to understand when you think of it as the combined force of hundreds of heavy tractors running at full load at the same time, all focused into one 7-ton machine. Built from titanium, carbon fiber, and controlled rocket fuel systems, every part exists for one purpose: stability at extreme velocity. Bloodhound LSR represents the edge of what engineering can realistically attempt on land. Even the smallest mistake at those speeds would be catastrophic, so everything is designed with aircraft-level precision and safety margins. Despite funding challenges and delays, the project stands as a symbol of pure ambition. It shows that as long as speed records exist, engineers will keep pushing further, sometimes by simply adding more thrust, more power, and in this case, a rocket point straight at the horizon. And that brings us to the end of this journey through some of the most extreme jet-powered machines ever built. From early aircraft engine land speed cars to full rocket-driven monsters, each one pushed the limits of what was thought possible on wheels. Some broke records, some ended in disaster, but all of them changed engineering history in their own way. If you enjoyed this deep dive into pure speed and mechanical madness, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more insane machines just like this. See you in the next one.